Good afternoon, everyone. That's really loud. It's wonderful to see so many, a lot of new faces, and some people have been to the other meetings as well, but it's really nice to see. It's really beautiful. I have spoken to a couple of people today, and they told me, although they can't make it, they watch it online. So I think there are so many people interested in what we are all co-creating here, which is amazing. And I don't know about you, but I really felt that in the last couple of months that there was really a shift in energy, and it's going towards like people are really coming together and see what we can create together, how can we shape the future of Glastonbury, and that's really beautiful. So thank you for coming today. And today we have a really lovely program together again, and with some really important topics. And we have the topic of healthcare access, antisocial behavior and community support. We will have an interesting talk about St. Dunstan Cottage, the new Pilgrim reception centre, and updates from our exploration groups, the Free State of Avalon, the Community Cohesion, and the Town of Culture competition. And after these presentations, we will go into the break, which means we will have another possibility for the exploration groups to meet, for you to sign up. So, but I will explain more about it afterwards. And then at the end, but really important, the final part is like an open mic of what your concerns are about Glastonbury, so we can then see if we can bring it into the next meeting, or if you want to have an exploration group or find other people to work with on this topic. And for everyone who's here for the first time, but also for the ones who need a reminder, just some practical notes. So in the last meeting, it was absolutely amazing. Everybody could just speak their opinions and freely, and everybody listens, and it was really great. So we will do that today again. If you have your mobile phone with you, it would be amazing if you could switch it off at that point. And when you leave the church, we would really invite you to do it quiet because of the neighbors, and we really would like to be able to continue to use this place. So I invite Johanna to come to open this meeting with the Unity Candle.
We ask that the Glastonbury Unity Candle be a constant reminder that we are all part of the one. May its light remind us to be accepting, loving, and open to all those we meet, regardless of different backgrounds and opinions. Let us learn to all work together in a creative and unifying way, and take our world into a brighter and peaceful future, filled with better understanding. And we now keep silent for 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Joanna. You're very beautiful. Our first talk is Francis, and he will talk about reclaiming health. Thank you, Francis.
Hi, everyone. When I was asked to do this, because of my background in healthcare, I sort of thought I'm very negative about some things, very positive about other things. And this is not anti-NHS or pro-NHS, but really, initially, we need to understand what the problem is before we can go forward at a community level and change things. So here's my 10-minute talk. Okay, so NHS, a system under siege. Am I talking too loudly? Okay, let's start with a number. The NHS receives roughly £112 per patient per year to fund every GP consultation, referral letter and phone call. That's about 31p a day. For that, your GP is expected to manage your blood pressure, your back pain, your loneliness, your grief, your mortgage stress, sometimes all 5 of those in a 10-minute appointment. The NHS is under genuine pressure, structural, financial and demographic, but much of that pressure is the wrong kind of pressure, demand that the NHS was never designed to deal with in the first place. Consider what walks through a GP's door. Long-term conditions, heart disease, diabetes, respiratory, account for over half of all consultations. That's real clinical medicine. But around 20% of all appointments are for lifestyle conditions, driven by how people eat, move, sleep and manage stress. And roughly 1 in 5 appointments are for what we might call social presentations. That's loneliness, housing problems, debt, bereavement, distress, relationship breakdown. And these are not diseases. They're life rooted through a clinical bottleneck. Mental health deserves particular attention because around 40% of all GP appointments have a mental health component. But within that figure is a distinction that we rarely make. Roughly 15% of those, or 1/3 of all the mental health appointments, are for genuine clinical illnesses, diagnosable depression, anxiety, psychosis, PTSD. These people need clinical care. However, the other 25%, or 66%, are not. They are for normal human distress, grief, fear, loneliness, job stress, real legitimate suffering, but not disease, and a prescription is not the right response. Here's the starkest evidence that something has gone wrong. The share of adults seeking mental health treatment rose from 23% in 2000 to 48% in 2024. That almost doubled in a generation. But the prevalence of mental health illness has barely moved. We haven't discovered a hidden epidemic. We've medicalised the ordinary suffering of ordinary lives. Beyond demand, the structural weakness is now critical. Take the financing, something called Private Finance Initiative. Delivered NHS buildings are a catastrophic long-term cost. 101 trusts collectively owe £50 billion, with some trusts spending more than 10% debt. That money isn't buying care, it's buying buildings that already exist. Then there's the workforce. There are nearly 103,000 vacancies, that's about 1 in 14 posts, unfulfilled across the UK NHS. Nearly 1 in 3 staff regularly consider leaving. The NHS now has 19% more staff than before the pandemic, but sees only 14%. A productivity paradox that tells us the system is exhausted, not just understaffed. Then there's inequality. Health inequalities cost the UK economy around £68 billion per year. Life expectancy at birth varies 10 years between the most and the least deprived areas, and we are one of the least deprived areas. Maternal mortality is 2 to 1.3 times higher for black women than white women, in a publicly funded universal health system. Also, the inverse care law was an idea identified by someone, Julian Tudor Hart, in 1971, holds that communities that need the most care receive the least, and that's certainly true here. The collapse of social care, delayed discharges, patients ready to leave hospital but with nowhere to go, block beds and stall ambulances. The waiting list for planned treatment now exceeds 7.5 million. Much of that isn't a health hospital problem, it's a social care problem parked inside the NHS. In 1975, the Austrian philosopher Ivan Illich published a book called Medical Nemesis. His central claim was breathtakingly blunt. The medical establishment has become a major threat to health. He wasn't anti-medicine, he was anti-dependency. His argument was that industrial medicine at scale, with the cultural authority it had acquired, was systematically destroying our capacity to live, to suffer and to die without professional management. He called this iatrogenesis, harm caused by medicine itself, and he identified 3 different forms. The first form is called clinical iatrogenesis, and it's the direct harm of treatment. Unnecessary procedures, hospital-acquired infections, toxic drug reactions, one condition replaced by another that the treatment itself induced. Illich acknowledged genuine clinical gains. He wasn't naive, but he argued they were overstated and bought at a hidden cost that was never entered into the calculations. The second was social iatrogenesis, the creation of dependency. By medicalising every life problem, birth, death, grief, anxiety, boredom, ageing, medicine undermines our capacity to manage our own health and suffering. His phrase for this was devastating. Personal responsibility for my future is transformed into my management by some agency. To have your suffering legitimised, you must become a patient, passive, managed, and waiting for instruction. The third, and probably the worst, is called cultural iatrogenesis, and it's the destruction of the cultural iatrogenesis. It's things caused by medicine, and it's the destruction of our ability to deal with suffering. Every culture in history has developed its own frameworks for coping with pain, grief, and death through community ritual, philosophy, and faith. Industrial medicine has colonised those domains and crowded them out. Death itself is no longer a human event, it's a clinical one managed by professionals, surrounded by equipment in institutions designed to make it invisible. How relevant is this today? The British Journal of General Practice reviewed Medical Nemesis in 2025 and concluded that its critique is even more apparent now than it was in 1975. The numbers tell the story. 8.7 million adults in England are now on antidepressants. That's 1 in every 6 people. We lost the cultural vocabulary to manage ordinary distress in any meaningful way. The next big problem is Big Pharma, so the drug industry. Illich was suspicious of the drug industry in 1975, and he was very right to be. But what's happening since makes his warning look like a joke. The industry doesn't merely make drugs. It shapes the conditions under which drugs are needed. It funds the research that defines what counts as a disease. It funds the educations that trains the doctors who diagnose it. It funds the guideline production through bodies like NICE, which is NICE is the National Institute of... can't remember it off the top of my head. Yeah. That determines when and at what threshold those diseases will be treated. This is institutional capture at a systemic scale. It isn't conspiracy, possibly. Simon might disagree with me. Its architecture is built into the system. The mechanism is subtle but real. Industry funds roughly half of all clinical trial research. When industry-funded trials are compared with independently funded trials of the same drugs, the industry-funded results are significantly more likely to be positive. Publication bias, which is the suppression of negative data, has been systematically documented. Ben Goldacre's book, Bad Pharma, showed that half of all clinical data trial has never been published, and that what is published overestimates drugs' efficacy and underestimates harm. Let's be clear, modern medicine has achieved extraordinary things. Infectious medicine has been tamed. Surgery has transformed outcomes. Genuine innovation continues. The problem isn't medicine itself. It's a conflation of personal interest with clinical interest and the erosion of our independence that honest science requires. Where does that leave us? With the system under genuine siege from demographic pressures, structural failure, political short-termism, commercial capture and cultural loss of our capacity to be well without permission, but it also leaves us with something to be very hopeful about. The evidence is very clear that the most significant determinants of health, sleep, movement, nutrition, connection, meaning, stress regulation, are not medical. They're human. They're built on daily life, not prescribed in 10-minute appointments. The question is not whether we should abandon medicine, of course not. It's whether we are willing to reclaim the vast territory that medicine has colonised in our communities. Ordinary lives, ordinary suffering, ordinary ageing, and build the education, the coaching, the community infrastructure, and the cultural vocabulary to inhabit it again. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Francis. And our next speaker is Chloe from the Glastonbury Mental Health Network. And there are still some seats available if you want to sit there in the middle.
Hello. I've got my timer here so I don't witter on. So I just start. So my name's Chloe and I am a person who lives here and I'm really nervous, so I'll just speak even louder. Anyway, so 10 minutes. I'm talking about spiritual emergency, and just with a show of hands, who knows what that is? Okay, so from my understanding, from the position that I'm taking here, we all have a sense of self, an ego construct, and things can happen, and sometimes through spiritual experiences, sometimes through other kinds of experiences, that fragments and fractures that sense of self. And at the very worst, it can present like psychosis, and at the very best, with kindful transition, it can be a really transformational, positive experience for people. I suppose that we can all agree that we used to originally live in a shamanic indigenous culture where spirit was inherent in all that we did. Then we transitioned to a religious culture, and now we're in a scientific materialist culture. So you can kind of see how these sorts of experiences would be treated differently in these different ways of cultural understanding. So here we are in Glastonbury, and it's a place where there are a huge amount of transformational experiences available to you, if you should want them, on your notice boards, in the Oracle. Sorry, I go a bit closer. If I just speak about my own experience, I've had two I've lived here for about 11 years. I had two profound experiences, one really good, one really not so good. The first one, I was doing a meditation training, and I've got the kind of personality experience where I dissociate. I'm a dissociative. So my nervous system is not designed for seated meditation. It doesn't work for me. When I became, let's say, unstable through the practice of meditation, the meditation teacher was really present for me, and I was, really not okay. I could feel the pain of the crystals when I went past the shops. It was pretty profound. And he was on the phone and he told me that I was going to be okay, it was totally normal and it was part of the process. And so I wanted to just talk about the brain a little bit. So this is your brain. Here you've got your brain stem, limbic system, your fight, flight, freeze, all of these things that are going on here. And here is your frontal cortex, your emotional regulation, problem solving, self-control and logic. So if you flip your lid, none of those are online. And this can happen. I know somebody's going to talk about antisocial behaviour. I just sometimes feel like that's what's happening with some of the behaviours that we are seeing exhibited around town. But what I feel here is sometimes it can go really wrong. And I had an experience where I had some really strong, in a ceremonial context, had some really strong medicine. And afterwards I experienced suicidal ideation. And when I tried to contact the shamanic practitioner, they didn't answer the phone, didn't get back to me within months. And so, this is my experience, and I feel like it's kind of emblematic of the ways that things can go. So through my recovery from the meditation flipping of my lid, I had the idea that we are in a town where we also have a lot of really amazing practitioners. I'm really drawn to the idea of R.D. Laing and, problematic, but therapeutic community where we care for people and they live and they exist with us and we care for them. Incredibly difficult to do in this day and age, but when we have a town where people are so well trained and so well experienced, some of that feels like it could be possible. So that was the big idea for the Glastonbury Mental Health Network, and it kind of, resources, human capacity. We effectively run 4 hours on a Thursday, and so that's your big ideal. That's your actual potential, though, is having a safe space that we hold currently at Heart of the Tribe on a Thursday. But my point, I guess, is these best practice practitioners, what do they do and how do they do something different? I feel with the breakdown in services that it's necessary that communities come together. It's all we can do now, isn't it? And so these people who are really extremely well trained, not just in receiving information and knowing what to do, but they're also mental health trained. They know about the brain, they know about what goes wrong. They can signpost people to services when they see that it's gone wrong. They have unconditional positive regard, we learn in counselling. They can love people, but they also have really clear boundaries. They carry out a basic psychiatric assessment before they give a really profound experience. And they are able to manage their ego enough that they know that they need to be in professional development and supervision. And they offer aftercare after they've delivered their medicine or their, breath work. I heard about somebody the other day who had a yoga nidra. They did yoga nidra and they were put into psychosis through yoga nidra. So, I think I just... that's it.
Thank you, Chloe. And now we have our Somerset Councillor, Ewan speaking about the new NHS neighbourhood plan, neighbourhood pilot and the hospital.
Thank you very much, everyone. I haven't got a speech. I haven't been as prepared as everybody else. But maybe that's because I might get up a bit. But maybe that's because I live and breathe all of this on a regular basis. The one thing I would ask for everyone here at the end is just to consider how we can all help the situation moving on. I have been at numerous meetings at Somerset Council level where South West Ambulance Service, where the NHS has been telling us how they're going to develop health services. And I keep reminding them that the people of Glastonbury, all we see is health services are diminishing or moving further away. And then I invite them for a visit of Glastonbury. And you can go online and look at all of those meetings and you can see that I've done that. Equally, it's meant that we've had lots of visits of NHS people here. So what does that mean for us in the new neighbourhood pilot and plan? So hopefully everyone's aware that the NHS is going through the 10-year plan at the moment. There are 3 shifts to it, 2 of which are from delivery of services and healthcare to prevention, and the other one is from acute to community. And it's that last one that I really want to sort of talk about. We've already heard about the prevention message earlier on from our first speaker and how important that is and the wider determinants of health. Sorry, I'm public health qualified as well. I won't go down that route. So we all understand that. But I think lots of people are really worried about what's happening with West Mendip Hospital and our services here. People are worried about mental health services. People are worried about drug and alcohol services. People are worried really about dentistry. And how can we access those services going on in the future? So the NHS is trying to get together with communities and develop new neighbourhood plans that meet the needs of the local community. So in essence, they're coming to us and saying, what healthcare needs are in your community? How would you like for them to be constructed? How can we deliver them with you? And that also allows access to the third sector, voluntary groups, etc., in order to be part of that process. They've already started to do that. The West Mendip Neighbourhood Reference Group is one such group that I've started to become part of. And they continuously ask the community, can people come and input and tell us what services, etc., could be used outside of West Mendip. Likewise, we've got St Dunstan's House, and I know that Jax Cross, our clinical director for the primary care network, is also asking regularly for members of the community to inform her what services can we put elsewhere across the community. And in actual fact, I was with Jax only on Friday talking about that and how we can actually expand the level of services throughout our community going forward. We've already had phase 1 of the neighbourhood trial through the NHS. 42 sites across the country were identified, none of them in Somerset. I did ask why that was, and the response that I received back was politics. And what was meant by that was that there are no Labour members of Parliament in Somerset. Now, I've asked the question, how do we make certain that Somerset feature in the next tranche of developing these neighbourhood community networks? And I've been informed that we've got 5, possibly 3 networks that are in the running, one of which is based around Glastonbury Street and Wells. So this then comes back to my call to action. If you're interested in this, if you are passionate about a particular subject, healthcare subject, please come to us, please inform us, please tell us how you wish for that to happen. There is stacks of clinical evidence that shows that care delivered in the community, closer to people's homes, nay indeed in the front living room of the individual person, delivers far better outcomes than if you go to a hospital or those sort of clinical environments, because you're stripped away from many of your support mechanisms, your friends, your family, etc., who can help you. So if you think we should be doing a particular healthcare service in a particular way in the community, feed it in, and then we will at least be able to articulate it. Whether they'll be able to achieve it or not, different question. So how do we do that? I've already mentioned a couple of those groupings. We've also got an organisation called the Local Community Network, the LCNs, and we're part of Avalon and Polden's Local Community Network. And that's a mixture of all of the villages throughout Avalon and Poldens. So that's Street, that's Glastonbury, that's the Poldens, etc. And we've got membership of that grouping. They're just about to set up the healthcare LCN group in order to start to quantify our needs as a community. Anyone's allowed to come and input to that. If you don't want to do it directly, but you'd like to do it indirectly, please also just send me email or pick up the phone or prod me in the chest and tell me. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the neighbourhood plan going forward. We've got 8 more years of this in order to improve the way that we deliver healthcare as per the NHS plan.
So our next topic is crime and antisocial behaviour. Maybe you have 2 minutes for...
Gosh, what a portfolio. Is it just antisocial behaviour or crime and antisocial behaviour? Okay, so this is a really interesting topic. You get lots of various different opinions and positions from the very far right view of the world all the way through to the extreme far left of the world. Do we have a problem? There's a first question. Going back onto my NHS and public health training. Glastonbury has the highest reported crime rate of any town in the whole of Somerset. The number 1 reported crime is sexual assault and domestic violence. And that can be mapped. You can actually see that on the statistics. We get the police stats delivered through the town council on a on a monthly basis, and that doesn't change really. Many people think that, and have articulated to me, that antisocial behaviour stems solely around alcohol consumption, etc., bad behaviour, high street. That's around about number 4 or 5 in the list of antisocial behaviour and reported crimes that we have as a community. I would also offer to you that it's not necessarily alcohol that is the issue. It's crack cocaine and ketamine that are the issue, and many of those on the high street who do actually take alcohol are actually using the alcohol to extend that drug high that they're on. I'm not saying all, but we've got plenty of evidence to show that's the case. So if it's not alcohol that's the issue and it's drugs that are the issue, what are we doing about drugs as a community? I'm not a police officer, but I do have monthly meets with our neighbourhood team, St Lancy, etc. And as you probably read in Nub News and other areas, they have taken a number of kilos of cocaine out of our community from Watchwell Drove. They did significant raids on a couple of homes just after Christmas when we had the incidents down at the assembly rooms and also at one of our pubs. So they're trying to do their bit and tackle that. There is a undercurrent of organised crime that runs through our community that is being monitored and, where appropriate, is being tackled. Clearly, of course, in order to successfully charge somebody and take that person to court, you need the evidence, nay, the hands in the cookie jar, proverbial, to actually get that to stick. And that activity is happening. Please, can I also, this is a plea now, please do not ostracise any elements of our community. I've heard so many people say, oh, it's because van dwellers and these people and those people. That's not the way that we can live as a community called Glastonbury. That's not what I recognise, at least anyway. What I do recognise is that we've got a really interesting kaleidoscope of a community, many of whom get exploited, and also some people do have needs. And we talked about mental health earlier. I'm not afraid to say that I've got complex PTSD. I hope you don't mind me sharing why. So my father died when I was 5. I was put into boarding school 6. I was then systematically sexually assaulted between the ages of 8 to 12 at boarding school by the priest. I then went into the military, Bosnia, Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan, as a medic, and saw all manner of things. I've got some rather heavy mental health stuff going on, but I'm a high-functioning individual, and I'm lucky in that respect. But I do take mental health drugs to all of that. It doesn't mean that I then go out and do antisocial behaviour. Likewise, many of our other people don't, and well, previous speaker talked about flipping the lid. We need to understand, and that's what we're trying to do with our response to that antisocial behaviour. We do have some mechanisms. I know you're all hovering, I need to finish. We do have some mechanisms. You will have heard about the Public Spaces Protection Order that we used to have. We've got new legislation that's available to us, both CBOs and also civil injunctions, which are being explored and executed as we speak. Sorry. It's all right.
Thank you, Cameron. And someone who is having his own approach and to support Glastonbury in this process of bringing antisocial behaviour to social behaviour is Graham, and he will tell us today what he is doing. Thank you.
I'm delighted to be asked to address you all, because this is really something really close to my heart. I'm born in Glastonbury, lived in Bovetown for the first 20 years of my life, and I've never moved away from Glastonbury other than when I was training as an engineer. I now live out on Thornton Estate. Why am I doing what I'm doing now? It started off as just a health sort of walk tour of Glastonbury, getting my steps in. And I was doing that mainly evening times, and I recognised was a real problem. We know we've already touched on that. And I thought, something needs to be done. I didn't see any way that it was going to get any better as it was. The infancy of what I actually do goes back to 1991. So what I do is 35 years old. Hard to believe, because people come up to me and say, what's a community ranger? And what does it do? Who are you? We've never heard of it before. It's new. It's not new. First introduced 1991 in Sedgefield in County Durham. They were called Community Force. They're still going today, now called Neighbourhood Wardens. And that's part of a Home Office situation there. So what I do in the town, I act as an ambassador for Glastonbury, and to be the eyes and ears of the town. I am between the people and the police. People will come to me, they will share information which does get passed on to the police or to councillors or whoever the stakeholders is responsible for that. I work within the local community, forge community links, establish relationships to improve the area and quality of life. I act as a signpost for the town people in Glastonbury, provide advice, information to either agencies or our council services. The thing I get asked the most in Glastonbury is, where's the toilets? Right? Yeah. Any of you are observant, if you go down the high street, you have a look, the signposts are all facing the wrong way. So if you want to take a little tinkle, go into yin yang. So that's where it points. The other one is, the second one is, what is a community ranger, which is common, and it's fine. To be alert and, where possible, deter antisocial behaviour. That works just as a uniform presence. And I can see it work. I've been with people that are very, very drunk. and I only have to be in the area and those people would disperse. I don't have to do anything, just stand there. I've got a sort of a military background, but it was through the cadet forces, and I had 10 years in uniform at the Royal Navy Cadet Forces in Yeovilton. Involve the community and develop its capacity to take action and promote responsibility for improving neighbourhoods. Now, I'll go on later to some crime figures. Some will be what Ewan have just said. But our biggest problem with antisocial behaviour or any other crime is we're not reporting it enough. Okay? And that is absolute fact. So we don't want to really see people moaning about it. Do something about it. It's really, really, really important. Because the more we report, the more the people at the top will see that there's a problem, and then the more police we got. So our crime figures for March are down. Okay? That's a big shock, I know. But they're down. And what's happening already, the police are now already being taken away from the area because it's not looked as important. Provide a visible and reassuring presence to the community and businesses within Glastonbury. Businesses love me because they just like the presence. So sometimes I get teared up because so many people give me so much praise. You know, it's amazing. Identify, report and prevent environmental safety and security issues. That could be literally a manhole cover damaged. It could be I've had the fire station with a leaking pipe that they didn't know they had, and you just pass that sort of information on as well. So last year, I went into uniform in March last year, and up until the 31st of December, I'd given Glastonbury 120 hours of my time. So now we start 1st of January, to where we are now, and up till this morning, I've done 178.5 hours into the town of Glastonbury. On a Sunday morning, I'm in really early, 7:15. I clear the high street of litter. So I do other things than just, the other bits and pieces. And I go down Northlow Street, and I go out along Maclean Street and pick up everything there. The empty bottles, the glasses, the cans, the food wrappers, it all gets put in the bin. Because when you get the street cleaners around, the people that empty the bins, that's all they do. So if there's anything around that bin, they won't pick it up. They just pick up what's inside. And you'd be surprised, most of the things I pick up are around the bin, unless they're just tipping it out. So non-confrontational, uniformed appearance, have integrity, respect and courtesy, fairness and impartiality, presentation, and you'll always see me smart. Confidentiality, professional standards and behaviour, promote good citizenship and public awareness, increase public participation in the prevention and detection of crime, help increase community safety to reduce fear of crime, improve police-community liaison, and operate within the law. Have I arrested anybody? Not yet. Don't want to go there, really. But I have mentioned to a police officer about an individual that if I catch him, I will arrest him. So be rest assured. He said, please don't do that, because I expect a lot of paperwork. But this is through shoplifting. So the formation of Neighbourhood Watch goes back to 1982. And as I said, first community force was introduced in 1991 in Kenya. Government papers were to introduce community patrols was in the late 90s. This was dispelled by the Metropolitan Police as looked upon as cheap policing. 2002 we have PCSOs. What's that? You could almost say you have introduced cheap policing. Not that there's anything against them, they do a good job. Lack of Home Office and funding within the police today. Community patrols more accepted due to under-resources and on-the-ground intelligence gathering within the community. Bournemouth got a set of people who've done exactly what I'm doing. They were formed in August of last year, but they've got 60 of them down there. You're talking of a population of about 200,000. And they didn't get any support from their town council or anyone else. They just decided that something needed to be done because there's almost a rape a day in Bournemouth. Well, recorded rapes is 300 a year. Knife crimes 150. That's what's recorded or reported, we'll say. But I speak to people that from Bournemouth that come here as visitors. One I met that was a therapist, and she said it's a lot higher than that. So she's seeing the people. They're called now Bournemouth Safeguard Community Support. They were originally called Safeguard Force. Force is a really bad term, bad name to use. Even the police don't refer to themselves as a force anymore. But out of what they've done, something really good come out of it. Because they were having such an impact within the town, suddenly there's funding being found and they've got 11 more police officers. So something positive happened. And they've got this amazing thing they're doing at the moment. They're going to operate something called a Vigil app on your phone. So that basically if you were walking through Bournemouth and you felt fear or worried, you could tap the app and any of their safeguard community support people will be within a mile. They will know there's a problem and they will go to that area. They're also setting up as well in Bournemouth safeguarding spaces. So businesses are saying we will be a safeguarding space. So if you're frightened, you could go into a shop. So doing that as well. I was talking to a policeman yesterday. He thought it was a fantastic idea. I find that more people now approach me in the town than they did initially. Nobody really gets past me unless I say good morning or good afternoon or how are you, and so we'll talk about the weather. Because most people will walk around looking at their phones with their feet on the pavement. But for me, it was all about engagement. So I find more people now waving to me and say, hello, Graham, and I don't know who they are, which is good. And somebody did that to me yesterday and said, hello, Graham, I haven't got a clue who they are, but they know of me. You know, there's a video on YouTube about me. And so that's nice, and I'm getting more engagement because we need to have a more positive approach right throughout the town and be happier. On average of what I've done, I'm somewhere between 9 and 10 hours a week of my time into the town of Glastonbury. Usually it's something like, yesterday it was 9:30 to 1:30. It could be 10:30 to 1:30. Sunday's always going to be about 7:15 to about 9:30, quarter to 10. Monday I do the talking cafe in the church, so that's usually about another 3 hours, somewhere around about there. What can't be measured within police statistics is crime prevention. So they can obviously record how many burglaries we've had, sexual assaults we've had, and all those sort of things, but what they can't is crime prevention. So they can't really put a lot of officers in walking around because they don't actually know what will happen. They know it'll deter crime, but they don't know by how much. If you've got a fear of coming into the town of Glastonbury, and there's plenty that do, you are a victim of crime. And that's not recordable. So fear of crime is not victimless. So can we build on what I'm doing now? Yes, we can, and there's lots of ways of doing it. There's no reason really why the town of Glastonbury have not done this over the last 35 years. None at all. There's plenty of ways of doing it. Yes, I'm a self-appointed volunteer and I've done it, but there's other ways of doing it. Winchester got bid rangers. I was talking to somebody when I was coming here. He knew the BID people in Western-super-Mare. That stands for Business Improvement Districts, and that's funded. That's just where I'm going, that there's no reason why we couldn't have something because it can be funded. So you can have that. As I said, Bournemouth got their safeguard and community support. Weymouth have got, their council have got something, it's a really long name. They're like Weymouth Safety Community Support Officers or something. But so why did I choose Rangers, community rangers? Daventry's got a community ranger in there. Charlotte, she's really, really good, gets a lot of praise. Community, I needed that word. Rangers, because people will shout it. They'll say Ranger if they want me. They're not going to say Glastonbury Community Support, whatever. You're not going to get the attention. So that's why I chose Ranger, and also with the idea that we could grow, and that we could also do the parks, and we could litter pick parks as well as what I'm doing. That's what we are now. Just be in the area. Drugs, yes, drugs is a real problem, and there are people in the town that got starter packs for children. Frightening. Really frightening. So yeah, that's worrying. And I know of some people that have been seriously affected by this. The community is vital to helping the police. It's just down to us in a lot of ways, So going back on, I'm going to cover this a minute, time-wise. How much time?
You can come to that now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's told me. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. There are also more places to sit upstairs. You can just go up the steps upstairs. Our next speaker is Nick Maclean, who has an extensive experience in structural engineering, and it's about the cottage in St. Dunstan's car park, the St. Dunstan's cottage. So Nick, if you would like to come and tell us. So the council, just for the context, the council has made a vote on demolishing this little beautiful cottage in the car park.
So far, the talks have been about general things and people, and I'm planning on talking about what I've been asked to talk about is the problem with this one building, and it's an overall problem of engineering. I see. I call myself a pre-app engineer, and I started work as an apprentice in January '64. Went to university. Ended up in a group in a very large company specializing in investigations and building defects, and whose fault was it? Builder, architect, or engineer? And at that point I'd like to ask if there are any architects here? Any engineers? No? Okay, so it'd be pointless me being rude to engineers, which would benefit architects. Builders? Builders usually think engineers are jerks, and I kind of agree with them. So I had prepared a little talk to make sure I was in the 10 minutes, but I don't think that's necessary now, because what I'm going to do is, because standing here in this church, it's actually an example of the problem I see on St. Dunstan's Cottage, and the engineers have just got it completely wrong, and the justification for demolishing it is there are these problems which are all exaggerated or non-existent. And yesterday I just went through some of the issues for people, and I did a little summary saying that the engineer's report on that building was vague and inaccurate. And this morning I read not only their conclusions and recommendations, but also their observations, and I've added the word wrong to my summary. They were. I hope you're familiar with it, but I look at that and think we need more housing than car parking spaces, and that's the beginning and end of it as far as I'm concerned, except that thank you. Except if there's collateral damage and a few engineers get demolished, fine. I said I have this old experience, and in 1993, there was an article in The Independent about subsidence without high subsidy, and the insurance companies were bleating about the fact that there was £1 billion in claims that year after a drought. And somebody in Wincanton, where I live, had shown me this article and said, did I write that? Because it included the chief technical officer of the Institute of Structural Engineer saying engineers are running around shoring up buildings that don't really need it. So I wrote to the editor of the Independent saying, I agreed with that and pleased to see what he said, but frankly he didn't go far enough in his criticism. And instead of publishing that letter, they photographed me outside a building, diagnosis without foundation. And that's exactly what we've got at St. Dunstan's Cottage. And just to go, it's thermal movement, not foundations. They've said it might be foundations, but there's thermal movement. And we have it here. These cracks, if you look in that truss, you see that crack over there, and up here too. Those are thermal movement cracks. There was another, I'll just show you. if I can find it. And the engineers for that did that report on that building seem not to have been aware of this talk at the Institution of Structural Engineers, and on the front of their thing they say Institution of Structural Engineers. Bookend effect, myth or menace. Everybody knows if you heat things up, they expand. And brickwork particularly is strong in compression but weak in tension. So the expansion cycle can produce certain movements, but like that one over there, that's a crack as a result of the roof expanding, because you imagine what it's like up there last week. and it pushes over and causes that crack. When it cools again, you're more likely to get this sort of thing here, where the roof has pulled away from this end wall. And it's just everywhere. And engineers will be reaching for, as they have on St Dunstan's house, and said, oh, there may be some foundation strengthening necessary, all sorts of things. And I keep saying, no. Diagnosis is what a great summer. Where's the polyfiller and paint? Right? When I started work soon after in the 60s, there was a wise old engineer in the R&D group of this very large firm of consulting engineers who said, buildings only fall down when they've exhausted all possible means of standing up. And since then, I've read Spike Milligan's book, Paku, and Little Pot Boiler, and in there's a poem which is, things that go bump in the night shouldn't give one a fright. It's the hole in each ear that lets in the fear, that and the absence of light. And there is just so much absence of light, thinking and so on with engineers, it's extraordinary. So I'm a bit of an eco nut. They keep running around saying, oh, we need concrete here or steel there. No, we don't. It's what a great summer. And really, I don't think I need to say anything more, but if anybody's got an issue, something, a sagging roof, a bulging wall, or cracks that they would like a little bit of an idea about, come and see me at the interview, and I'll tell you. If you can describe it, I'll probably tell you what it is after 60 years of this experience. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the next speaker is me, and I will tell you about the new Pilgrim Reception Centre we just opened 2 weeks ago on High Street. Some of you have been probably at the first meeting where I have spoken about my opinion about what the difference is between a pilgrim and a tourist in town, and really the need for a place in Glastonbury to anchor this pilgrimage energy. We also had the talk of John Wadsworth at the second meeting. Really a place for the unity candle, a place where people can come, sit with the unity candle, a place where people just feel welcome. And I think we made it. I really think we made it. The last weeks have been amazing. The feedback of people is absolutely fantastic, and I can tell you how it looks like, but it's really a place to experience. So I invite you all to come. Not once, but all the time. Come in whenever you want. We have people here sitting who are coming every day, sitting with the unity candle. We had a first aid training for the volunteers this week, and a mental health first aid training. And the trainer mentioned something which I didn't know, that actually the number for people who are deciding to leave this world is skyrocketing for the people over 55, and especially in women. And I had no idea. So, but what I have seen in the last couple of weeks in the Pilgrim Reception Centre, the amount of people who are coming together, finding people to talk to, finding new friendships, and it's really, we have a kitchen. Come in, make a tea, have a cup of coffee, speak to our volunteers. There's always someone who's listening to you. So, and we will have a lot of meditations, pilgrimage walks, and so much more to come. So thank you. Please come and experience it for yourself. Thank you. Chris, I got just told you want to say a couple of words to St. Dunstan's house. Thank you. Yeah, welcome.
No, I'm thrilled. And you guys and Nick are going to save that house, there's no doubt about it. So I don't have to say much about that. I want to make an announcement because I've only got 2 minutes. I'm feeling very hard done by. These guys have all had 10 minutes. I've got 2 minutes, so I've got 30 seconds on. Down at my place, which is actually the second best building in Glastonbury, the Zigzag building, we're having a midsummer festival. We're calling it Glastonbury Festival. And it's a free festival, 21st of June. It's a Sunday, and we'll be building a pizza oven for it. So do come and help build a pizza oven if you'd like to, because it's huge fun, and it'll be a community resource. 30 seconds. But back to the building. The building that Nick is going to save and you're all going to save. Lovely. I'm not sure I'd want to live there myself. Why? Personally, I think it should be used as a community resource. And it occurs to me, why don't we offer it to UNESCO? Now, UNESCO gets a lot of bad press in this town, but they are the educational and cultural wing of the United Nations, and they were set up, and the US is leaving UNESCO for the third time at the moment, and the bad guys are all bailing out. Why don't we welcome UNESCO and work with them? Less than 2 minutes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. Well, it's for sure diverse today. So now we are coming to a couple of speakers who will tell us a little bit, because last time we were founding these exploration groups. So if you haven't been here last time, the exploration groups means that people come together of the people of Glastonbury and go deeper into a topic in order then to present what they have explored to all of us, so that we don't all have to get involved in all topics, but we still be informed. So the first speaker today is Wesley, and he will tell us a little bit about what happened and how far the group of the Free State of Avalon is coming. Thank you, Wesley.
Hi everyone. My name is Wesley. I'm part of the, as Katrina just said, the Free State of Avalon exploration group, and we've been meeting every week at the pub to talk about the sort of what, where, why of creating a free state. Creating, for anybody who's in any doubt, what it really means is a country. Creating a country, the Free State of Avalon, that is sovereign and operates, if you like, outside of the parliamentary system and the crown of the United Kingdom. So we've been meeting every week to discuss these ideas. Seriously. So, we came away with 3 objectives for the group. At the moment, we've been meeting fortnightly. We're going to be here during the break. Come and talk to us, and we're going to consider how often we should meet going forwards. But the 3 objectives we've come up with for the group are to create our own jurisdiction away from the legal fiction, to create our own infrastructure working towards independence, and to create our own decision-making processes, energy systems, and management of the land and those who dwell on it. Okay, so, yeah. To create our own decision-making processes, energy systems, and management of the land and those who dwell on it. Those at the moment are our 3 objectives. Okay, so one of the main topics that came up was land itself and borders. So if you were to try and essentially turn Glastonbury into the Free State of Avalon, where would the borders be? You know, would you use the current electoral boundaries that we have? Or another suggestion was the Glastonbury Zodiac, because that seems to resonate with a lot of people. And then if you go back, there's historical precedents for all of this, because Glastonbury used to be independently taxed. So back in the days when it was owned by the abbots, nobody would pay tax to the crown, they would pay tax to the abbots, and they would manage things within the town. And back then, there were certain borders, so somebody suggested, well, why not use those borders? Somebody suggested using the borders that existed when we were a borough, as opposed to what we are now. I don't fully understand what that means, but ask them. Come to the meeting and find out. That's it really. And then, along with the question of where would the borders be, would be how would you get the mandate, how would you get the consent to do any of this, you know? And that would be, there's a few ways of going about it, but one would be to essentially canvass people over months and years, spreading this idea, spreading this plan for what this state would look like, and then hold some kind of referendum amongst the people of the town as to whether or not that could happen. Another idea was to start small, so to start with a small piece of land, create a community that operates differently, has a different decision-making system, has its own currency, has its own written constitution, things like that, and then see if that is something which could spread to the rest of the town. Okay. How is a country recognized as sovereign? So how, if you create a country, as you know, you go to various countries around the world, there's lots of these little autonomous communities, and some of them succeed in becoming states. But how? And we've just heard a little bit about the UN. One of the main ways is to be recognized by the UN as an actual country, or other international bodies like The Hague or the EU or whoever it is. If they say, oh, that's a country, then you know, you're kind of a country. You need passports, you need a written constitution, you need healthcare systems, you need, some would say an army, everybody would say that. One method as well that was suggested for creating a sovereign nation was to explore this idea of individual sovereignty. So if you yourself as a person claim sovereignty, essentially saying, I am my own nation, I am my own country, and you can do that through sort of lawful processes. What happens when a group of people do that together? Can you create a nation in that way? Okay. The currency idea was one that came up a lot. How do you create your own currency, and why would you bother creating your own currency? The idea is that you can't be independent from the country as it exists today if you're still using their currency and if you're still part of that taxation system. So you'd have to find a way of creating your own system of I'll try and touch on your point in a second, Lynn. Creating your own system of taxation and creating your own currency, whether that is a cash currency or a digital currency, a fiat currency, which is where the value of the coinage is equal to the amount of a precious metal within the coin. So it's not backed like by the US dollar or anything like that. It's backed by the value of the coin itself. Gift economies, one second. Gift economies, the let system, these have all come up. And it was a key point that was made, which was that if you were to try and do this, the only way to make it into a circular economy would be to make sure that council tax was paid in that currency. That's the way to create a sort of circular system. Okay, nearly done. Yeah. one idea that was floated was the idea of having a different timekeeping system. Many people in Glastonbury follow the moon, right? People here follow a lunar calendar, a 13-month lunar calendar. So it makes sense that in Avalon, maybe you could consider the idea of a 13-month lunar calendar. So these are all outlandish, wild ideas, but these are the kind of ideas that you have to consider if you're talking about something as crazy as starting your own state. So that's what we've been doing. Thank you very much. I'm happy to.
Yeah. So we will go into the exploration groups for the break, so then you have the chance to put your name down for this. Yeah.
Hi, the Free State of Avalon group has been meeting in the Mitre on Mondays at 7 o'clock, every other Monday, in the garden behind the Mitre. But you can sign up on the website, and also we're thinking to change the day, so we're going to meet up by the table by the teas after anyone who wants to check in. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have Martin speaking about the Community Cohesion group.
Hi everyone. So we set up after last meeting, set up the Community Cohesion group, and it's a diverse group of people. We're about 14 of us who are deeply passionate about cohesion and harmony in this town. We've had 2 meetings so far. We meet by a beautiful sacred tree on Magdalene Street, which it's a community garden that I'm part of. And so we've only had 2 meetings so far. We're exploring cohesion as a topic, what that means, whether really we mean cohesion or coherence or harmony, what is it exactly that we mean. And we're looking at, and deeply passionate about unity through diversity, and what does that really mean when there's a lot of different opinions coming together in a town with lots of passions and lots of conviction. How do we unify what does that really mean in practice? So we're exploring all of this. We've got another meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. If you want details, I'm going shortly, so Sidika, get all the details. Right now we're looking at, okay, this is a beautiful concept and we're having some lovely conversation, but what does it mean in practice? So tomorrow we're working on what's the vision and the purpose of the group, and what action are we going to take? What specifically is going to be different as a result of our work in this coming year, like a year's time? If the Cohesion group has been amazing in having an impact, what's that going to look like? And we're looking at that, like cohesiveness in us as a group as we're working together, cohesiveness within the POG, and how does this influence the different exploration groups here, cohesion amongst the different communities in Glastonbury, and with the council as well, importantly, with the council. So Zoe Price, the new mayor, has got this initiative around cooperation and community and kindness, and is there a way of us to link into that? So we're looking at all those types of things. Yes, that's it. If you're interested, come and speak to me if I'm still here, or Sidika, or one of the others in the group. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. And now we have John, who's giving us an update on the Town of Culture Exploration Group.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much, Katrin. And I just want to really acknowledge Katrin, for all the work that you've done. And everyone here, but when we started in that talk that you gave, that first meeting, when we said we need a centre for the Pilgrim, we need a Pilgrim reception centre, and now we have one. I mean, that's a real result, isn't it? And it's so exciting, and it's happened. And it's all happened since the last meeting that we had here. It's incredible. It just shows what you can do. You get together and So on the back of the talk that I gave last time, we set up a Town of Culture group. We've only met once, but it was a really great meeting. We met at, is Amanda here? We met at Amanda's house. Yeah, you're up there. On Above Town, which I thought it was beautiful, brilliant. We got 10 people, such diverse and interesting perspectives. And, the group was set up to look at all the reasons why we didn't think it was a good idea for us to apply to become a Town of Culture, because and so we explored that, but what we realised is that we, rather than being against that, we really want to be for what Glastonbury is, and to be really guided by the genius loci of this place. So we all shared our stories of what brought us to Glastonbury and why we love this place so much, and we really want to work with the other groups. And we thought it would be a good idea. In fact, Sidika suggested this actually, but I think it's a good idea that we perhaps because we bring the UNESCO World Heritage group, perhaps we amalgamate the two groups, because I think in a way a lot of the things that we're saying are the same, really. Why it's the same reasons why it's not a good idea to become a World Heritage site. So what are we pro? What are we inspired by? What inspires us as pilgrims here in Glastonbury? And I think that to work with the Pilgrim Reception Centre now, and maybe to have our next meeting at the Pilgrim Reception Centre would be a great idea. So I've been very busy. I've got a big book launch coming up next week when we can. So that it'll have to be after that. But I'd like to put something in for that week from that week of the 8th of June. So if we can find a date that week, one evening, and then meet more regularly, maybe every couple of weeks, that would be great. So I'd be totally up for kind of holding that vision. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So we have now a possibility or time to ask questions. If you have any questions to anyone who has spoken so far, that's your moment.
And I'm just wondering what is happening to that building now, basically. St Dunstan's house.
Rick, you want to give an answer?
Oh, yes. Oh, so basically I was just asking, in a nutshell, what's happening to St Dunstan's house? Because I remember a few years ago it was going to be done up, and then it was going to be a healing centre, maybe for alternative therapies, I don't know, because it's all been a bit, what is going on there? So I'm just wanting to ask you, you mentioned it earlier on, so it'd just be good to know what actually is going on there.
Can you say when that was? Thanks. There's talk of putting it into a...
Just hearing.
I've never heard of it. Never heard of that.
You never heard of St Dunstan's house, Rick?
Oh, St Dunstan's house? Oh,
yeah.
I thought we were talking about Cottage.
No, St Dunstan's house.
You do the house.
I'll do the house. Just so everyone can see me. Jack's Cross, over there, okay. Jack's Cross, who's our clinical director for the primary care network here, she's been a central force to the development of St Dunstan's House. As people may know, St Dunstan's House was also one of the Town Deal projects. Now that's been completed, so St Dunstan's House is now finished. It's now set up, it's ready to go. And if you haven't had a tour of it, you can go and ask for a tour of it, and they're quite proud about showing people about, because frankly it's renovated the place and it's wonderful. It's good to go. It's got things like a kitchen in there so we can do community cooking classes and awareness, etc. The Armed Forces Outreach Service do services out there. I know Mental Health does as well, and a number of other organisations. So it's there to be used by the community, for the community.
Well, can I just say, I mean, we have spoken about this before also here. So the thing is, like, we don't want to, have like a brochure answer, because the fact is, St. Dunstan House is ready for over half a year. It has finished over half a year. It has pretty much been empty since then, and there was like 2 open days in that time. And the feedback we have got is that people who wanted to go and rent it, it was just way too expensive for anyone who is to pay for that.
It's effectively ended up a commercial rental property.
Okay. No, absolutely. What I'm telling you is what it's there for. Yeah. If the funding profile, you and I have had this conversation, if the funding profile is inappropriate, and I've had a number of different organisations approach me in my capacity as a councillor, which I have articulated back to the town council. And forgive me, I'm not going to share that correspondence with you for obvious reasons. And I've lobbied on our behalf as a community, asking for lower rates, especially for grassroots community organisations. The decision on what the funding levels are rests with the Glastonbury Town Council. Okay? So, if we as a community believe in order to get better access, a number of conditions need to be changed, notice I said conditions, not necessarily just the money, then the best way to influence that is speak to your town councillors, and Rick, I'm looking here, possibly that's one way of doing it, but then many of these meetings are open forum as well, where you can attend, and to articulate it that way as well. Absolutely. I think. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I think we're agreeing violently together here. And I think from what I've already said, me trying to advocate for lower prices, etc. Dare I say it, somebody from Glastonbury who's a councillor who listens and then follows and asks the question. So I try to do that. With regard to who can hire the hall, anyone. You don't have to be an organisation, you don't have to be an individual. You can be either. So that's the first thing. With regard to the rates, there are local community rates that are set, and you can see those on the website. Now, if they're perceived to be too high, I know that we perceive them to be too high, then that's where... No, not off the top of my head, that's where we have to do the advocacy to the town council in order to do the changes. Does that make sense? I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, they own the building, you know.
Ah, they do, yeah.
They own the building.
It's before I turned up being a councillor. Sorry.
Well, Rick is here from the town council. Maybe Rick, you probably were there when St Dunstan's house were bought, you know. So,
Rick, do you want to come up on the stage?
As you know, probably. And being Australian is one of them. I'm in good company today because I believe there's another Australian. Right. Going on with this, with the Dunstan's house, we were not given a lot of information when we were elected in 22 because everything was under control and everything was being developed and all the ideas, you know, and the projects were about to get the money, etc. So we weren't allowed to ask for any information about any of the projects whatsoever. So, sorry?
The Towndale project.
Yeah, Towndale project. Sorry, yeah. Now, interestingly, after it was completed, St Dunstan's house was completed, I had a meeting with one of the senior councillors and asked them, okay, because we know nothing about the property, etc., we can see it's a good job. Connor has done an excellent job on it as the clerk, running the contract. I'm well experienced with writing my own specifications, etc., and a lot of building work in the past up in London. So he did do an excellent job of it, you know, schedule-wise and costing-wise, etc. We still had to pay £800,000 towards it, you know, as the part funding, as you know, community has got to pay that anyway. But what I did ask this particular person was that, great, it's all looking good, it's fantastic, how much rent are we going to get for it? So I stared at me blankly. I got this blank stare, and I said, what, you're not charging anybody a rent? And like I thought what was going to happen was that we would get this is what I was kind of led to believe, that the NHS would rent the building off us at a fair price and provide all the staff, etc., not individual, so that it would be open to the community, more or less, like a, you know, kind of hospital. I don't know what they're doing in there, because as I say, we have no idea. We do know that they spent £70,000 on TVs, you know, and I think, I don't understand. It's very much like, this is why I'm so anti the demolition of the cottage as well, because again, we've had a survey that's been produced which clearly says, and thank you for coming, Nick, it clearly says that there's been no investigation of foundations, no intrusion into foundation, and yet we were told at the meeting last month that they were seeking demolition because there are no foundations, twice. And it's quite clear that they haven't dug any holes to even inspect that. And it says it in the report that I gave Nick. Are you still here, Nick? Yeah, over there, yeah. I mean, what a help this man has been. A great... Yeah, no, yeah. We don't want. Yeah, the details are irrelevant now because we know, and you know, you've seen the place. You know what's the problems. There's no problems to demolish it at all. But the thing is, moving on to that, then, okay. Well, they can't demolish it anyway. They can if they apply to Somerset for a Section 80, which is a piece of paper that you send off to the county. And if they can give you permission then to develop it. And that's a 5-week process to do that, especially if you're not going to build anything on it. It's a simple thing to do, unless you get objection from the community. And I hope that there's a lot of people in this community that are really objecting this. I don't like the way it's done. I don't like the way the building has been ended up in a dilapidated state through just total lack of maintenance. It's horrific. If you were a pub owner or whatever, you have, in your lease, you have guidance on what you are supposed to do with the building. Look after the roof. You've got to maintain, redecorate the outside every 5 years and the inside every 3 years. That's statutory, and if you don't do it, they get thrown out, simple as. So why this council cannot look after a building, because there's been no maintenance done on that for the, 40 years I know that I've been here. But anyway, the major problem I think this council is going to fall down in is because of so many complaints. Stories I've had letters written to me now about their growing up there in their childhood in that house, and there's quite a few been in there, and of course they called it the vampire house because of the bats in the back, right? And it's not full of them. You don't see hundreds of thousands of bats, but I've got testaments from them saying that it was constantly bats flying about in the season. Which is May till July, end of July, etc., etc. So they're still there. I've been up there and seen them. One bat I've seen, and it might have been another one, I don't know, but it was ruffling its wings, and it wasn't a bird. So who knows? But what we need, I've been in touch with the bat conservation people. We've had quite a bit of correspondence, and I'm going to ask them, right, I think you need to get prepared for an application for planning, so that we can have our proper survey of the bats in that building. And then we can adjust the house appropriately to house them. There's a lot of things that house needs, but not £200,000 or not £160,000, especially if you're not knocking it down. If you were knocking it down and rebuilding, yes, that would cost you £160,000. But I don't trust this council, I'm afraid, I have to say.
Thank you, Rick, one of our town councillors.
Yeah, just a question for Ewan, just to explain a little bit more about how the process of actually making our requests and needs known for healthcare with this new thing. So could you just explain a little bit about the mechanism of doing that and how we can get involved in discussions? And it's a strange thing to note that that in our council we've got lots of subcommittees, but it actually isn't one on health, which seems a bit bizarre. So we've basically got an exploration group we're setting up, but it'd be just nice to know how that exploration group can then sort of liaise with what's happening with the NHS.
And that was exactly what Jack and I were talking about as well. Should Glastonbury Town Council have a health and well-being group, but not necessarily in the formal structures that they've got it in the town council at the moment, but far more of a community-based group, rather than it being led by lots of town councillors, etc. How can we do that now? So the matron down at West Mendip Hospital, she's it's a discotheque, shows my age. The matron at West Mendip Hospital, she's leading the community stakeholder group, so getting contacts with her down at West Mendip. The local community network, the LCN, Avalon and Poldens, they meet on a monthly basis, and they're just about to set up their health and wellbeing network as well. Jack Cross and myself are on that at the moment, but given that you've heard what I've had to say about community engagement and doing it slightly differently, that's how Jack's feels as well. So please get in touch with us. So we're right at the start of this, which is the great thing, of course, because then hopefully we as the community can get together, those who are interested in healthcare. You don't need to be, Professor so-and-so. even if you're just worried about one particular aspect because you're a carer, a dementia carer, and I was down with the Dementia Carers Network a couple of weeks ago. If that's your thing and you want to make certain that that particular healthcare component is suitably catered for, then make yourself known. The more people, the better.
And just ask one more question? Basically, one of my volunteers before I came here said the same thing what I told you before. She's worried that West Mendip Hospital is closed. The quick answer, no, it's not. They are running a pilot at the moment. Sorry, that's Americanese. A pilot is being run out of West Mendip Hospital, and as we've probably seen in the press, they've reduced the number of beds, I think, from mid-20s to 16. And this is part of an overall pilot that are running through all of the various community hospitals. At scrutiny committee, I did ask the Integrated Care Board on what basis they plan, why they did this, and what modelling they had actually conducted. The answer that they gave I found to be substandard, and I told them to their face that it was a substandard answer and I needed better reassurance for us as a community. And I come back to the point that I made earlier. If you're a member of Glastonbury, all you see is services diminishing or moving further away. Now, I wouldn't mind that in a conceptual perspective, so long as we understood how they're developing it in other areas and going to make it better for us. At the moment, there's a dearth of that information. Great, thank you.
Okay, I think the most important thing when you're looking at community care is how close it is to where you live.
Great. Any other questions?
Last meeting we had a presentation from the farm,
Yeah.
Project was in jeopardy, and it was all hinging on whether the Somerset Council would buy the land for the farm. Is there an update on that?
You're Somerset Councillor, do you know about it?
Elizabeth, but do you want to give it first?
I don't know. I saw Bon like about 5 days ago, and she told me that she's still waiting. That's all I know.
Yes, the answer is the bids have been in. So as we all know, I think it was Friday last was when all of the bids had to be in by. The concept from a Somerset Council perspective is that if Somerset Council are the preferred bidder, they then procure the land that then gets leased back to Bon and the farm, and under a number of conditions, and then it can continue as a going concern. So that's the concept. What I do not know is, one, how many other bids there were, and two, I don't know what those bids were either. And I'm still waiting for that information. That's as much as I know.
Okay, thank you.
Do you hear me?
Can you?
Okay. My question is, I heard that sexual assault and domestic violence is the highest crime rate. So my question is, which will also include child sexual abuse, domestic violence, is there a support system in Glastonbury and around for that existing or not, for that specific
common? Avon and Somerset Police have set up I don't know, it seems like a sticky plaster, I'm afraid to say, a walk you home service. And so that's for anyone, notice I said anyone, not any female, anyone who feels unsafe. If they're on an evening out type thing, they can request that service where PSPO, member of the actual constabulary, then walks those individuals back home. Which is quite unique actually, and they successfully ran that throughout the winter time. I still think it's available at the moment. With regard to wider services. I don't know the answer to that, but if I can take your details afterwards, I'll ask the question and I can come back to you and maybe come back to everybody else at a subsequent meeting as well. Is that all right? I don't know the answer though. Again, I'll have to come back to you.
So thanks very much, Ewan. And I think that just kind of highlights the need for, there are services existing, but we just don't know about them. So I think that's part of what we need to do as People of Glastonbury, is to actually, to signpost, on our website, and so just to gather all this information. So it's really important. And I just wanted to just briefly say that I know that Francis, who's going to be heading up the Access to Healthcare Exploration Group, and one thing that he's offering, well, he's involved with is, he's looking at me now like, is mentoring. So it's like healthcare mentoring. So I think this is so that's just highlighting that. Is that something that we can explore within the healthcare group? And then, of course, if you're interested in that or any other aspect of healthcare, then come and talk to us in the break. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So now we have to pay for this church. So we will give a jar round now for you. For your donations while we are still talking here. So if you could put a couple of pounds in there to help us pay for the church, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Yes, you have another question? Yes, fantastic. Yeah, would love that. Great, thank you. We will give you our details for the radio. Yeah.
I have a bat detector. Is that any use?
You have a what detector? A bat detector. Oh, Rick. You have an offer on up there. Jeff has a bat detector. A bat detector. Fantastic. Over tea, you can continue this conversation. So, we are breaking into fabulous. So, we are breaking into our exploration groups now, and we will have, for sure, one new group today, and because I'm speaking, I make a little bit of advertising for this group. So this group is the Council Operations Group, in which we will have a look at what the council is actually doing and report back to this group. I'm really excited about this, so we can go once a month to the council meetings. We'll have a look at all the budgeting and all this kind of things, beautiful things. This morning, for example, I walked along the high street and I'm like, where are the flower baskets? We spend so much money on, like last time I saw it was £20,000 a year for Glastonbury in bloom, but in May we don't have flower baskets. So collecting all these questions, sending them to the council. Whoever wants me to join me in this group, please come and fill out this little paper. And we have more papers. One group is the World Heritage Site, which will then go together with John and the Town of Culture. So if you would like to be part of this, come to John or Sidika and put your name down for it. Then we have an exploration group for food and food security. And this is Simon, who you can find in this corner there. Wave once. So if you would like to be part of this group, there are already people in those groups. And then there's a exploration group to access to healthcare, and this is already existing. And Francis will take your name and your email address if you would like to join that group. And then we have, as far as I understood, Graham, you are doing the Antisocial and Crime group. So if you would like to join Graham on this group, please come and speak to him. Then we do have council operations with me. Town of Culture with John. And then Leela or Wesley, if you want to come to the group, you will be by the T's for the Free State of Avalon group. And then I think, will you, Sidika, get the ones for the community coherence? Because Martin is not here anymore. And then there are a couple of groups which we think would be really good to have, but we don't have anyone yet to anchor these groups. If you feel drawn to those, one is 5G street lamps, smart cities. Some interest in the room. Another group is housing, homelessness, travelers. Maybe in this group, you would like to do that? Perfect. Then you go and see Wesley if you want to join him in this group. And then planning and neighbourhood plan. And there's Paul Lund, you will speak later after the break. He will be part of this group. He's really knowledgeable about the neighbourhood plan, but he's not anchoring it. So if you would like to anchor this group, please, maybe I can give you the sheet anyway, Paul, and then talk to Paul. Yeah. There's a youth provision and education group as well. Anyone for that, please let me know, and I will give you We will continue with that, but we will add groups over the time. So thank you so much for this part. We have delicious cake, coffee, tea, all here prepared for you now. So please come and add yourself to the groups, and then after the break we will come together and we will have a couple of people and open the mic for concerns you have to share. Thank you so much.
And that's great. And we have a council, and we have an administrative government and bureaucrats, and we have everybody who's paid for them to support statutory rights, and also under good King Charlie, seriously, the people's right to live as living souls. And so that means we have every right to discuss things like what we're discussing now, and planning and the statute aspects of things. Unfortunately, our government has given us the 1990 Town and Country Planning Act and the Environmental Protection Act of the same year. And these things are put in place for a reason. They have criteria which afford the correct planning of towns and country. So there are certain procedures which happen with this, and one is the informed public, the informed people. So at present I've been dealing with a number of my neighbors a planning application where this didn't happen in any way so far. And I would be looking to assist the local council in understanding some of the concerns which would help them perhaps do a better job next time. Let's see here. So on May the 12th, a planning application was forwarded at Somerset County Council for a building which is basically sat in a horseshoe of some listed but old buildings in a quiet, peaceful neighbourhood at the heart of Glastonbury's conservation area. So the tone of our neighbourhood is historic and represents the history and customs of the people who've lived here for hundreds of years. A barrack-looking aesthetic has been quoted by one of my neighbours to describe the application's designs, which I concur with. Yet we were not informed as a neighbourhood of the planning application. It's called a planning application notice, so that we had the time to respond, the good time to respond. The note went out on the 12th. I received mine on the 23rd. Some of us received it on the 27th, and some of us have still yet to receive this planning notice, advisory note, application notice. So we're handcuffed. We couldn't respond early. We couldn't get organized, yet we have somehow through community. And I guess that's what I'm looking at now. It's our local community of people within the 19 houses who are within that horseshoe that surrounds this planning application bid. We got together and we're working to help to inform the councils and the planning officers of the legal statutes of the Home and the House and County Planning Act. So that's how we can help. We have to marshal our forces and not be pressed down by greedy speculators, because this planning application, in the humble opinion of practically all of the neighbourhood, can be seen as nothing other than that. It's a combination of two new builds of height which blocks the garden sun and basically turns 2 or 3 gardens into courtyards from overlooking and overbearing heights, and changes the entire peaceful nature of that area, which I believe it's been that way for at least 40 years. But, you know, we weren't informed. The council actually looked at this proposal with the landowner and the applicant on the, I believe it was the 19th of May. Now, that's before any of us knew that there was a pan. Supposedly, now, I was told this by a planning officer, now the notice on the gates of a property can be placed by the owner applicant because of the cost of having a Somerset Council worker come out and do that. So we're saving money, but we're not being informed because this notice was placed in a place where it simply wasn't visible unless you were really looking for it and you spent a few minutes. It took me 5 minutes to find it.
When's the planning application deadline?
Right this evening. The comments on the portal, you know, which we were limited by as little as 3 days for those who received it on the 27th. It's, yes, tonight, yeah.
So if you send me the details, the link to the application, I can put it on our Facebook group. So if anybody, you go onto the Facebook group and then you can put in an objection. Is that helpful?
It'd be helpful, but, you know, it's really concerning, I believe, in terms of planning decisions. It more tends to be the immediate neighbors, the people who would be affected, I believe. But, you know, it could help for sure. Okay, so the reason why I thought it'd be good to talk here would be to just make you aware, you know, like the council had ample opportunity to come up and look at where the application was, to even see if we were informed, but they didn't. They looked at the whole application on this meeting on the 19th and passed it unanimously, and almost in a backslapping way, saying, this looks really great. And we've looked at the designs, and the number of statutory criteria in this application that are broken is phenomenal. So it will be most likely rejected unless we have a very crooked planning officer. I hope we don't, for his sake and for our sake, because that makes things difficult. Because then you have to get into appeals and then more money for barristers, etc. So my goal, like I said, of speaking here is to let people know that these people are all good people, they're all doing their job, but they don't get the T's crossed, they don't get the I's dotted, because they get caught up in their titles, unfortunately, and fortunately their lives, their husbands, wives, lovers, friends, and they're not always on it. So that means we have to be. Great. Any questions? Any questions? I've got about 3 minutes before I've got to go to a meeting. Mark.
Is that the same? I know there's a public right of access around Norwich Road.
Around where?
I think in that area, like between Silver Street and High Street, there's a right of access which goes through there, which I've looked on the ordinance survey maps exists, but if you try to walk that, you can't. I'm just wondering if it's all part of the same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to colour the developers in any kind of bad light, but there were trees on the property which were under a tree protection order, and they came down because they'd grown to too dangerous a height. So that enabled, I believe, the application to be made, because suddenly there was a lot more space. But there are the three tree replacements within that application elevation, so they're taking care of the statutory requirements. Yeah. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to... Thanks, Inigo. So just a very quick plug for one of the exploration groups, which is our planning group. And so what I would think would be quite useful is on the planning group, which Jesse, I don't know if he's still here, he's going to coordinate, there he is over there, and Paul's going to speak more to this as well in a minute, is to actually, on a very regular basis, to check the planning portal for any applications happening in Glastonbury and then notify people. So hopefully this sort of thing may not happen so much. Yeah, thanks.
Great, fantastic. Thank you. And now I invite Marissa. You would like to talk? Would you come upstairs?
Hi, my name's Marissa. I lived in Glastonbury for about 7.5 years. I was really moved by different speakers today. I arrived in Glastonbury because I was made homeless by family members. I grew up in quite a unique way with my grandparents were from Italy. They came over after the war, and I grew up with them after my mother died. I was a baby, and they knew about the land. They ended up settling in Bournemouth, and so I grew up in a community house. And we were self-sufficient. We used to grow our own food, and I ended up in Glastonbury, and the system, the law of law is a very cruel and dehumanising system. I really appreciated your talk today, Graham, about being a ranger and being, a member of a person of Glastonbury. My experience with the police from a young age. I grew up, although I grew up in a very, there was two sides of my upbringing which were very nurturing, and it was a very sociable house. The other side, I was affected by alcoholism and drugs in my family, and many members are alcoholic and addicts. And I ended up in a relationship with a recovering addict. Actually, the house that I grew up in was right across the road from a treatment centre in Bournemouth. But I was made homeless by my family. My grandmother was taken away. A lot of the women on both sides of my family have experienced abuse and violence, sexual abuse. I was affected by psychological and sexual abuse in my childhood by a family member, and I wasn't supported by the system. I wasn't heard, and my grandmother basically had all her finances and property removed from her. And I've ended up a friend brought me to Glastonbury, and I've lived and worked here. I've had a varied experience of working for different establishments. I think the idea is that there's a lot of good-hearted people here. There is a lot of people with unresolved trauma that are projecting their anger, that have businesses, and I've been on the receiving end of that. And I've removed myself from quite a lot of those places, and I found myself homeless again. I've been renting privately. I was living really happily up at Windmill Hill for 5 years, and I had to leave. And now I found myself living on the land for the first time. I've never camped before in my life. I've always wanted to. It's a really beautiful space. I think from what I've heard today, there's a golden opportunity. I ended up going to London and ended up in a women's centre at King's Cross. Effectively, they've called Women at the Well. And the reason why I ended up there is because I met a lady on the street outside Euston Station many years ago. And she was wanting to get to this women's centre. She had said that there was a nun that was there that were helping women, and she'd experienced violence from a partner, and I sat with her for quite a while. And when I ended up in London, I remembered that place, and basically everywhere you go, you end up being signposted to another place and another place and another place. There doesn't seem to be any shelter for women, and there's a golden opportunity now for this cottage. We've got 2 houses, not actually 3. We've got loads of empty buildings. The Red Brick, I believe, started as youngsters, teenagers squatted in there. That could be a home for children. teenagers. We've got St Dunstan's Cottage. We have St Dunstan's House. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of people with experience. It could be volunteer-led. My background is in hospitality, music. I was classically trained as a singer and Montessori trained, and holistic. I've trained in a lot of different holistic therapies. So my wish, I also had a friend, a very dear friend, who took her own life last summer. And the last thing that she said to me was that Glastonbury isn't the place that you think it is. It's a very dark place. And I was really shook up by her death. She was affected by alcoholism in her family, and she lost a parent at a very young age, and she was looking for a safe place to be, and I just hope something positive will come, and I'm really grateful to Katrin for reaching out to me and for a few other people. But at its, I've learnt so much in the time that I spent living on the land, even just for a little robin that flew past me, and the freedom that I felt, it's just been amazing. Really need to strip everything down. Money is, it's the people that matter. It's we can't take anything with us. We've just we can't take anything with us, not even our memories. But while we're here, somebody said to me, a friend said to me, you are nature, and so that's my wish, that there be a safe place for people to rest.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Marissa. And I think it was mentioned today before, then there's a need for a shelter and a safe space in Glastonbury. So let's put that on the list. Rick, you would like to speak as well? At least I was told you would like to speak. Okay. And then we have Paul. You would like to speak about the neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Nobody up there this time. They're all empty. So I think some of you will remember I was asked to speak at the first meeting and talk about the neighbourhood plan. There's been some further developments which I thought you ought to be aware of. First of all, just my name is Paul Lund. I was a town councillor up till 2022, and I've been involved with the neighbourhood plan since 2015. 11 years later, we still haven't got the neighbourhood plan completed, but progress is being made. So the latest is we had a meeting last week, and the Somerset Council have approved the current version to go forward to what we call Regulation 14. And this is where the agencies, the statutory bodies, get a chance to look at the document and make comments. And that's what's going to happen very shortly. But also, the public get a chance to make their comments. So very soon, households in the next few weeks should be receiving through their letterboxes a leaflet which will explain what the neighbourhood plan is, basically just in a summary, but it will give a reference for where they can read the whole document on the council's website and make a comment, whether they like it or not, or whether they want to change it or whatever. The council are not obliged, and we've been told by the consultants that the council don't have to reply to members of the public, and what they will be consulting the official agency bodies. If they make comments, there'll be some discussion between the consultants and those bodies. I just remembered that I forgot to tell you that I'm on the committee, the Neighbourhood Plan Committee, as the only non-councillor. All the other councillors are the Green Party. It appears that none of the other parties were interested or dropped out, whatever. There's been a lot of people change over the 11 years. And in fact, it's interesting that the last week, people couldn't actually remember what happened in 2015 or 2016. They're asking people, what did we do? How did it all start? Because there was a reason for writing the history of the Origin Neighbourhood Plan. So the timeline, because this is important, is that around the middle of June, this leaflet comes out to your doors, and up until the end of July, 6 weeks is all that people have to read it and make their comments, get them back in again, and that consultation period then closes. What then happens through August is the consultants will make a summary document of all of the responses that they've had, both the agencies and the public. Then on the 10th of September, the Neighbourhood Plan Committee meet again to hear what that summary and what those responses look like. We then move to what's then called Regulation 16, which is the consultation document, and then Regulation 15, I know it goes backwards, which is a document that goes to the Neighbourhood Plan examiner. I don't know who that is either. And between the October of this year and December, the Neighbourhood Plan examiner will look at the whole lot of comments and the document and decide if that plan can go to referendum. So by spring, they hopefully will have replied, and I think you can see what's coming. A referendum is a public vote held rather like a local election. This neighbourhood plan referendum will be held just in the town hall, and there will be a very simple question on or available to people who are eligible to vote in the town, and that is, do you agree, yes or no, with the neighbourhood plan? And my guess is that vote will take place at the same time as our local elections for the town councillors. And that makes a very interesting juxtaposition as to what will happen in the lead up with those political campaigns by the current incumbent members of the council, who will no doubt want to see the neighbourhood plan after 11 years succeed and go through, but they want to be the ones that will have the control of it. And those perhaps people, some of us here, some of you here, who would like to be candidates and like to say, well, actually, we'd like to have our own thing. Now, if once the numbers are known, next May, the vote is known, if 51% of all of those voting for the neighbourhood plan say yes, then it becomes a document which we've been told by the consultants will give preferential advice and treatment to any further planning application that comes forward. So where we actually thought that it would be part of the process, it now appears to be the document that will dictate for the next, I think it's around about 10, 15 years, what planning takes place in the town. Of course, we can't predict what government want to do, and government can override these things. But I think it's interesting, and I think that the outcome of this will dictate the future for Glastonbury in the next 10 or 15 years. And I think you want to know about that. I think you need to know about that. I've suggested that, the leaflet will give you a link to the council's website where you can read the plan. It's a fairly big document. I think that probably our discussion group that's going to take place perhaps needs to summarise it in a way that can be presented to you all, to a bigger audience, and for that to happen before the vote takes place next May, which we we do predict will be the time. We know that the county council, the Somerset Unitary Council will... The leaflet is due to come out in the next couple of weeks because the consultation period begins middle of June towards the end of July. So it's 6 weeks in that period of time. And they wanted to do it that way because they didn't want it to run into the school holidays and have lots of people having to deal with responses coming back and so on. So they want to get all wrapped up so that it's so the council members can hear what the results were in September. There is one thing. If you're not clear about what a neighbourhood plan is, then there is a website called locality.org.uk, and that tells you all about neighbourhood planning, and you can just follow through if you're wanting to know. Somebody did ask me earlier, what's in the neighbourhood plan? It is a set of policies which direct the decision making for where development takes place. Development for housing, development for industry. There are policies about the environment, but not a lot, and they mostly focus on which green spaces need to be protected and perhaps where there is a need to put more tree planting into position. There's also some policies about employment and industrial development as well, but it's quite limited. It's not the kind of thing that maybe you think of as what's a neighbourhood, but there is another opportunity for the town council, if it wishes, to develop a community town plan, which is really orientated to people and what the community wants, and maybe there is talk about that being the next sort of phase, but this is just all about planning. Okay? I think that's really all I've got to say at the moment, unless questions. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
How far legal plan involved in the plan? How far legal plan reaches that plan?
Okay, so that question was how far does the neighbourhood plan extend to? It is the boundary of Glastonbury town, which is the political boundary containing all 4 wards within the town, and it's the same boundary as the I was going to say yes, not the wards. I was going to say the town town deal. That's what I'm trying to get to. It's that same boundary. Okay. Extends to the marsh. The marshes. Well, only yes. It's wherever the extent of the ward boundaries don't go as far as that. That's another electoral area. But but within the town itself is the boundary of Glastonbury. So I'm not really explaining that very well, but you'll see it on a map when you see the town, the neighbourhood plan.
I've just been trying to establish boundaries.
Yep.
Because I'm part of the Free State group. Really think about where these boundaries are.
Yeah.
Now, when you say boundary of Glastonbury town, what do you mean? There's so many different boundaries.
Okay, to try and explain it, I mean, gosh, it goes as far north as the West Mendip Hospital. That's the boundary there. And yes, there's plenty of them. Yes, there's plenty. Well, yeah, exactly.
And it's called the boundary of Glastonbury town.
Yes.
I think it also depends on what.
I have looked at lots of different sorts of boundaries.
They are lots of different boundaries, you know. So you have the different wards, for example. It depends what you know. Some people in Bortensboro, I think they are still in Glastonbury. So, it's like depends on what.
Well, we did start off with the Glastonbury Zodiac, and we came into the 12 hives, and now we're on Glastonbury town.
Okay, Rick. But it's
for the next election. For the council election. Who's changing that then?
and okay. I've not heard that, but it's not been mentioned in the neighbourhood plan. But
maybe you could bring this up for the next full council meeting. Yeah. And make it an agenda point.
Okay. Can we? Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Public participation process. So it seems as if the neighbourhood plan has been put together by a bunch of consultants who then go, here's the plan we developed for you. Now you've got this public participation process, of which what you say is the council doesn't even have to reply to what the public say.
Yeah.
So what kind of public participation is that? If I remember reading the national planning framework, it did mention you have to have some kind of public participation that was meaningful. I don't think that's a meaningful process.
Okay.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, of course. There has been a lot of different types of consultation in the 11 years that have gone by, and I think we've all forgotten what they were. When the St Dunstan's house was first acquired by the town council, the council opened the doors, whitewashed the walls, and said to people, draw on the walls any ideas you've got that you want to see in the neighbourhood plan. So people wrote up all over the walls were pictured, and then the reality came around that a lot of those ideas were lovely, but nothing to do with what the neighbourhood plan was about. And then there's been other consultations. I remember recording interviews with John Cousins about what the Neighbourhood Plan was years ago and broadcasting them, and there's been a lot, but still people don't know what the plan is, and that's, I think, useful why I've been talking a couple of times now, and why it's really important to read the document and absorb it, and for other people to interpret that if you're not sure. There is one other thing, is that, of course, if there isn't 51% of the vote in favour, then the plan fails. And the consultants have told us, that's it. That we can't do anything about that. So I remember the committee last week saying, well, can we not amend it? Well, really, it's too late. Once the vote's been taken, you can't amend it. What you're going to do is probably start to jiggle with the edges and rewrite things, and maybe in another 5 or 10 years, if neighbourhood plans as a concept still exist, then bring it back again through the same process and have another vote. But once the public have had their say, that is it, and it is as defined and as precise as that. Yeah.
But there was something to do with that.
Yes.
That if we voted before this point, then it could be invalidated, and if it was after, then we had a better chance.
I know exactly what you mean, and it was when Mendip existed. So if the plan was voted through, and yet Mendip's local plan hadn't been finalised, then Mendip's plan, the next vote would be for Mendip's plan, and that would take precedence. So likewise with other neighbourhood plans in the localities. Well, Mendip is gone. The local plan is now being brought into the Somerset Council, and Ewan, no, he's not here, is he still? I think that the local plan in the Somerset Council has been completed. I believe so. So, sorry, I'm a bit vague about that, but we don't need to worry about that at the moment. We've been told by the consultants that when this plan gets a vote, if it were to be successful, then that will take precedence. We just thought it would be an advisory document which the planning authority would have to take note of, but they actually have to follow it. So that's actually stronger if that's the case. Was there anyone else? Yeah.
Just wondering how intelligible is the neighbourhood plan for people to actually understand it?
Yeah.
Are there any experts or anything that you would recommend that we contact to help us with it?
Okay, you've asked me this before. My reading of it is that it ought to be written. It is written in a way that everyone can understand it. But the consultants, there's been a few times when I've come up against the consultants, and I've questioned the use of certain words, and I've questioned the use of certain phrases, and they've said to me, Paul, it's planning speak. This is what we talk about. I talk about nature conservation. They talk about preservation. And I said, no, that's the wrong word. When we're talking about green spaces, it's not preservation, it's conservation. They said, no, it's a planning term. So there's lots of planning terms in there about the preservation of green spaces and no mention of how you manage them. But that's apparently that's the way it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, do one more. Yeah. Yes.
How much influence might that have over the main town plan?
They're completely separate.
How much
Well, I mean, the meetings I've been to, there's been talk about the community plan because it has a cultural aspect to it. And it doesn't seem, because the group that I'm sitting on, the Neighbourhood Plan, is just about the Neighbourhood Plan. So whilst they can talk about that, it really requires the council to make some positive decisions. Do they want to go down that route and have a community plan, and then that creates a new... Well, I think it's a bit more than a vague possibility. There is serious talk about a community plan, but and other towns like Totnes, I believe, have a community plan. But at the moment, I think the focus has been let's get the neighbourhood plan complete, which it is, bar the consultation process and bar the examiner and then the referendum, but get that completed and then move on to something else. All this is going to be subject to next year's vote, and there's a sense that possibly quite a lot of councillors won't be coming back, so maybe it won't actually happen. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, super important topic. So if you would like to join the group planning and neighbourhood plan, please do, and help that we all get this information in a nice way. Is there anyone else who would like to bring something up? You? Fantastic. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, just to say, we've got a sign-up form on the website for joining the exploration group. So if you know people that you think, wow, they're really active in this area or just got energy for it, then please direct them to the website, because we want to get people really meeting together to make things happen. Yeah, thanks.
So we have done quite a lot of questionnaires in town, on the Market Cross, and have asked, but we don't want to, we are party free kind of here in this space, so, and we would like to stay that, but thank you for mentioning it. So if there's no other question at this point, Johanna, if you would like to finish just very shortly, quickly. Go ahead. Say it, Lynn. Yes? Yeah? But really, we are already 20 minutes over time.
Okay. Just after the First World War, there was a place in Austria, I think it was called Wurzel, W-O-R-Z-E-L or U-R-S-E-L, something like that. And the mayor there realised there was loads of things that needed doing. And there was loads of people who wanted to do them, but there was no money. And what he did was create a local currency. Now, I know this is sort of reminiscent of Let's, but it's a bit different. And the local currency, he was able to pay for council work with local currency, and those people paid their council taxes with that local money. And it worked amazingly. So amazingly that the Austrian, I think maybe the Deutsche, I don't know, one of the Austrian bank closed it down when different places wanted to expand to it. So just be aware that our financial system is not, it's not serving us. We need a financial system that services us. In Cuba, when I was there in the late 90s, they have two currencies. One is the US dollar, which the tourists use. The other is the peso. You can't get pesos, except on the black market, and anyway, you can't spend them if you're a foreigner. You have to spend dollars in dollar shops. The Cubans buy their food and essentials with pesos in local shops, and it works. Or it did. I don't know if it still does, but it did work then. And I just would like people to consider the idea that we could have, for instance, to have sterling, gorgeous currency, as an international currency, but to also have national currencies, not necessarily just local. We could have just local, but national currencies, so that we can afford to pay people to do things that we need done when they're wanting to do them and get paid. Seems so logical to me.
Okay, thank you, Lynn, for bringing this up, and I will mention it again. We have to pay for this place, so if you have a little bit of money left, there's a donation box at the exit, and please help us to pay for this place. Huh? Pesos or dollars or whatever you have, just put it all in the jar. Johanna, thank you. So thank you all for coming, and Johanna will close it for today.
What a wonderful speeches and questions and answers, all in perfect harmony. Different opinions, different perspectives, and I feel all fed by this light of unity. Let this light of unity spread further than just a Methodist chapel, spread further than Glastonbury. Thank you so much. And until next time.